Okay, so I am Christine Del Negro from Solved Consulting. I have seen some of you before, so welcome back. And if you are new to these courses or to me, welcome. Today's course, so I am a literacy consultant with Solved. I've been with them since 2020. And I've been working as a consultant in New York City since 2013. Before that, I was an elementary school teacher in Westchester for 11 years. So today's, just want to, yes, thank you for that reminder. If you could just introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know who you are. So where you teach, whoops, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Where you teach, what you teach, and what you're hoping to get out of today's class. SLP. Ms. Yavner, what is SLP? I'm not sure if that's something, is that your role? Speech pathologist, okay, thank you. Okay. All right, we'll get started. Sorry, what here? Okay, a couple of technical issues. All right. So so just so you know, this is being recorded. And if you either came in late or need to leave early or get called away for a minute, if you would like a copy of the recording, you can request that. It will not be sent to you automatically. If you would like to request it, you can email admin@solvedconsulting.com. I will put that in the chat. Actually, I'll do it right now. And if you have any issues regarding this course, like you don't get your CTLE certificate in the next couple of days, you can reach out to admin@solved.com and they will help you out. And if someone could just do me a favor, we had one more person just log on. If someone could put the link to the slides in the chat, that would be helpful, just because I can't see them right now because I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So these are our norms for today. We're going to take an inquiry stance, ground our statements in evidence, assume positive attention, and take responsibility for impact, stick to protocol and hear all voices, start and end on time, and please be present to the best of your ability. I understand that there are often things going on around you. And especially during discussions, if you could put your camera on, that's just really helpful. Because otherwise I feel like I'm just talking to myself sometimes. So it's up to you. I know people don't love the camera, but if you can, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, so this is me. Okay, so today's course is Module 4, Course A, Ensuring Equity and Access for ELL and ML Learners. We have, people have already introduced themselves. see. Okay, slides are not my friend. Okay, here we go. There is a note catcher that is linked in the slides, but I'm going to put it in the chat. So this is your note catcher. You'll have to make a copy of it. And thank you to those of you who put the link in the chat for me. Oh. Okay. All right. So everyone has the link to the note catcher, which we will use in a minute or two. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, so we are going to look at the Universal Design for Learning's guidelines by looking at the research base for high impact practices to engage, represent, and express in multiple languages and ways, provide equity and access to teach ELLs and MLs across learning environments by identifying portable practices and tools for comprehensible input and translanguaging. A lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today are going to be useful for all students. So as I think is true of, most good teaching practices, they're going to work for everybody. Okay, and this is today's agenda. We're going to look at the UDL. We're going to explore portable practices and tools. We're going to talk about translanguaging. If you were in the other course that I facilitated, you may be familiar with translanguaging, or you may be familiar with it anyway. And then we're just going to reflect and think about what we can apply. Okay, so this is a classroom scenario, and just kind of a glimpse into a classroom and some things that a teacher does that may be helpful for an English language learner and may not be. So just think about how you currently deliver your instruction, and then what what advice you might give to, if you were a colleague of this teacher, what you might say. And here we go.
And next week, the tests are going to be hard, but that's all right because we're going to try really hard. Isn't that right, Cameron? Yes, Ms. Peters. Okay, great. Everyone listen up. So we're going to want to work all we get ours from the answer, the information, the story, okay? We're going to go ahead, factual tests, and try this accuracy test. Test your test. We're going to page, go to 3. First on page 3.
¿Qué dijo? ¿A poco va a empezar el examen? No, es una práctica.
We're going to take notes from the story and we're going to turn it into a math problem and we're going to walk through it together, okay? So the boy ran 3 blocks. So everyone write 3 blocks. How long did it take him to run 3 blocks? Michelle? Very good. 6 minutes. All right, so then we take 3 blocks and 6 minutes,
¿Por qué el
right?
niño corre con los bloques? ¿Qué? Sí, ¿por qué el niño corre con los bloques? No,
Okay, so the
corre 3
question I'm gonna
calles.
go on to ask us, how long will it take him to run 20 blocks? What do we do? How many minutes is that per block?
8 minutes.
Try and remember to raise your hand if you want to answer, okay? No, it's not 8 minutes. Michelle?
18 minutes?
Nope, not 18 minutes. Yes, Enrique?
40?
40, yeah, very good. How'd you get 40?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, 40 is the right answer. How did you get it?
I forgot.
You forgot. Okay, does anyone know how we get 40? Yes, Moises.
40?
Yep, that's right. Very good. Great. Can you tell us how you got that?
40?
Yep, very good. But can you explain to the class what you did here, how you got that? Joe, do you want to lose your recess?
No.
Okay, then. Thank you, Moises.
Can you help me, please?
Can you take a walk with me? I don't want you to worry about the test, okay, Moises?
Sí, estoy preocupado por el examen. El director Rosario que todavía debemos hacer.
Just try your best, okay? Do you understand? Not importante.
Sí, sí es importante.
You're right, Moises, it is important.
Okay, so if you were this teacher's colleague or coach, what are your thoughts on what she could, what are some things that maybe she's doing that are helpful, and then what are some things that she's doing that may not be so helpful and could actually be damaging? Student is struggling with instruction because there's no translation, basically being ignored. He's relying on a fellow classmate to assist. He's notably embarrassed because other students are laughing at him, not helping, but ignoring. Yep, agree. And just thinking about, one of the things that I noticed was just in general, I think that there were some instructional practices that the teacher could have been using that would be helpful for all students. So let's think about how, in terms of the way she presented the material for students, for any student, what was problematic about the way that she presented the material? And you can just unmute if you prefer to just give an answer, or if you want to put something in the chat.
Well, first off, she wasn't translating anything for the student who needed translation.
Okay, yep, there was no, and she didn't even say to the student sitting next to him who clearly spoke Spanish, just, hey, can you translate? So she didn't even do that. Yep.
And I think she was so fast that she didn't even check for understanding. Even the ones that speaks English, they didn't even understand what to do. I think she went so fast. She didn't check for student understanding of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. She didn't check for student understanding. What else? She also, she didn't help students break it down. So like she had at least one student gave an incorrect answer and she just said, no, that's not right. She didn't then say, you know what, let's slow it down. Let me draw a picture on the board to help us figure it out. And when I taught elementary school, I always, for math, you know, if it was a word problem, there would always be or I'd ask students, draw a picture to represent the problem. And clearly for the boy, and I think his name is Moises, if I'm saying it correctly, they did the little diagrams for you. He was trying to picture what the question was asking. And so some of it he got right, like he understood that it was the kid running, but then the blocks threw him off. But if she had done a drawing of what was happening, that would have helped him and it would have helped the other students also. I think she can ask one, yes, to help this friend until he gets the right support, definitely. And then for even when there was a child who had the correct answer, but when she asked him how he did it, he couldn't explain. So that would have been that was another opportunity. And the same thing with Moises, he got the right answer. Now, I think he did it mathematically, even if he just took the answer from the other kid. She, at that point, could have said, you know, when they couldn't explain, okay, you know what, you guys, that's the right answer. Let's go back and think about how we solve this problem. And let's go through it step by step so that everyone can see it. So from an instructional point of view, she could have used a lot more visuals. She could have slowed down. She could have had a translator for the Spanish speaking student. She could have she could have had visuals that would have helped everybody. And then what about when the kids were laughing first at the boy who had the right answer but couldn't explain it, and then with the student, the student learning English? What could she have done differently there?
Let them know that it's not a game, when it's not a joke. We're here to each one teaches one another to help one another if they're not pronouncing something correctly. Yeah,
and even like with the boy who had the right answer but couldn't explain it, she could have said something like, hey, you know, she could have gone to the board herself, or she could have said, hey, can someone help them out, and start, you know, foster this idea of we help each other out here. We don't laugh. And then what did you think about the conversation that she then had with the student in the hallway?
I didn't feel that it was appropriate to have that conversation in the hallway. If it's a hallway where it's just her and that student, but with other children passing, that's a distraction.
Okay. I hear
I was thinking that her main concern is for the student to take the test. She's not even concerned if the student understands anything about the test, since he's not English speaking student, and her main concern is all about the tests, the paperwork.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yes, it was. It was basically about taking that test. It wasn't concerned. She didn't show no concern with him not understanding English, understanding how to read, and you know, it was all about just, you got to take the test.
Right. I mean, I think and I don't know this for sure, but my thought was by the end, when she said to him, it's not important, and he said, no, it is important. I felt like she was starting to get that he really was concerned. I also felt like, I mean, just based on her age, she's probably a fairly new teacher and doesn't have a lot of the skills, and also is probably not getting, I'm going to make an assumption, I don't know this, that, you know, maybe she's not getting support from, you know, someone else in the building who might be able to give her some pointers. So I think there are a lot of issues there, but absolutely, you know, that we need to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of children who are learning a new language and thinking, and, you know, many of you may have been there yourselves. And we need to just understand where they're coming from and how difficult it is, and do what we can to bridge the gap as much as we you know, as we can. That's part of our role. Okay. Thank you all for your comments. All right. Okay. So true or false, using the MLs. Wait a minute, I feel like I missed a slide here. I guess not. Okay, so I don't, it looks, oh, all right, I'm gonna skip, I'm gonna go here and then go back, just to make sure that there are, so the historical term has been English language learner. And that describes students whose home or native language is a language other than English and who need support to develop English language proficiency. But the trend is to replace that term with multilingual learners, because these are students that are developing proficiency in multiple languages, this includes students learning English as an additional language in school. So they're still learning their home language, but they're also learning English. And so I think it gives, it acknowledges the fact that it's not about like learning English at the exclusion of continuing to learn their home language. It's about learning both. Okay. And so this would be true, is that you do want to figure out how you can use the ML's home language during instruction when possible. Either sometimes sometimes if you're lucky, there's another student in the class who speaks the same language and maybe further along in their English proficiency. But if that's not the case, what are some ways that you can incorporate some of the home language into your instruction, even if it's just, you know, words, putting some of the words from the home language alongside of the English definitions or a diagram. And I understand it can be challenging if you have multiple languages being spoken in your classroom, and some of them are more difficult to maybe the alphabet is different, or it's just harder to find resources. So it's definitely a challenge, but when you can do that, that is the ideal. So this is a mindset. This shows the mindset shift that is taking place in language instruction. And I want to, because it's difficult to see, I think this is the right link. I'm going to put it in the chat. Oh, okay. So take a look. I think that's the right link. Microsoft developed a program with over 160 transcriptions as the teacher is delivering his or her speech. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so just take a minute to look at this mindset shift graphic, just to, there's so much information there and it's on the slide, but I just wanted to give you a minute to kind of look at it in a little bit more detail. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but it's kind of hard to see on the slide. So it's just really about moving from the mindset of expecting students to use English exclusively to this idea of leveraging their home language to help them learn English. And, you know, the idea that if you have literacy in one language, that's going to help you develop literacy in another language. So this is, it's linked in the slides. You will also receive a list of any of the links that are provided today when you get your CTLE certificate. So you will have access to this as well. Okay, so knowledge and understanding are co-constructed through interaction and through the practice of scaffolding, whereby learners are supported through discourse. And multilingual learners develop their language through activities that integrate both modalities. So this is a visual of some scaffolding strategies that you can use. Providing students with native language support is a critical part of instruction for English learners. Multilingual learners, languages, and cultures should be seen as valuable resources to develop independence and agency in learning. And this is also, this graphic is linked in the same document as the one that we looked at before. So this is, this is the blueprint for English language English language learner, multilingual learner success is outlined here for you. And then there is a link if you want more information. Okay, so take a minute, and if you've pulled up the note catcher, you can jot it there, you can just jot it down, or you can just get the answers in your mind. What percentage of New York State public school K-12 students are ELLs? What percentage of New York City public school students are MLs? I don't know, actually, this the same term should have been used. And then how many different languages are spoken by our students in New York City? So just take a minute, jot down your answers, and then I will give you the answers. Okay. Okay, so 10% of the state's K-12 public school students are ELLs. 240,000 language learners, 57% are newcomers, 35% are developing. New York City, 14% of the student body, 24% are classified as having a disability, and they are over referred to special education. 151 languages in the state, and Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic are the top. Okay, so this is what I mentioned before. So there has been, historically, there's been an issue with teachers underestimating what students are able to do because of the language barrier. And part of the misconceptions is because of the way that the instruction has happened, and that home languages have not been seen as an advantage or as a way of bridging the gap. So this article, this is a good article if you want to take a look at it later. It's linked in your slides. It will also be linked in the document that you are sent. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, you know what? I want you to, you're going to take this quiz, but it's kind of hard to take it without at least skimming the article. So let me go back. And I'm going to put the link to the article in the chat. We will go over it in a little bit more detail, but just take a minute to read through that. You're not going to read through it extensively, but take a look at that, and then I'm going to give you the quiz, the link to the quiz. Oh no, you know what? I'm sorry. I gave you the wrong link. This is the link. The second link is the article. Okay, and then I put the quiz in the chat as well. So it's 3:07. We'll come back at 3:10 or 3:11. So just take a couple of minutes to take the quiz, and then we will move on. Okay, any questions on the quiz? Anything that came up that you weren't sure about? All right. So the universal design for learning is based on research. Oh my goodness. Not no day. All right, let's try this again. Okay. So the universal design for learning is a research-based approach that the underlying belief is that students will become expert learners if the barriers are removed and if they're engaged, because we know that they need to be engaged. So the universal design for learning was came to be in 1984. Two researchers from the Harvard School of Graduate Education created the CAST, and the goal was to revolutionize the way that students with special needs were taught. And then it evolved to address the disabilities of schools instead of the disabilities of the individual. So the most common example used to describe this change is called the curb cut. And the curb cut is what you see in the sidewalk. Originally, there were no, all of the curbs were 6 inches in height, but it was a barrier to people with disabilities. So they started creating curb cuts, which is what we see now. And then it turns out that it's actually better for everybody, because if you have a stroller or a bike or a skateboard, it's helpful. So the idea is that these changes that we make to address the needs of students with different needs, in the end, help all students. So there are 3 core beliefs of UDL, which is variability, that all students can work towards the same firm goals, and that students will become expert learners if barriers are removed and engagement is deep. And this is a video from someone, well, you'll see.
Accessibility is one of the key foundational principles of universal design for learning. And it's a component of universal design for learning, but is not by itself universal design for learning. I always think of the way we sometimes phrase it is that accessibility is essential, but insufficient on its own to be universal design for learning. Accessibility is really captured in the first principle of UDL, which is multiple representations of information. And from an instructional perspective, it's our old mantra: if you can't reach them, you can't teach them. That information has to be accessible and presented in a variety of ways: audio, print, tactile, graphically, by video, as many possible ways as there are to make sure that people can get the information they need. Whereas UDL really expands beyond that and talks about action and expression, how people exhibit mastery, how they can express their achievement, how they can really articulate well what it is they know. And then the third principle, really thinking about engagement, how we engage learners to enforce and enhance their persistence in ways that really can support them in the face of challenges.
Okay, so this is one way that you can provide equitable access to content through hyperdocs. You may be familiar with hyperdocs. Essentially, it's a Google Doc where all of the links that a student needs are linked into the document. So you could, you can provide additional scaffolding through a hyperdoc to bring students to a video or a diagram or an article that's going to provide them with additional information to support them if they are, a second language learner, or you can provide them with links to push them forward if they're ready to, for more challenge. So it's a way of differentiating for all students. And it helps you to reach everybody in a way that is, appropriate for all of their needs. So it might look something like this. So this actually, to me, when I look at this, it just gives students a place to go. Everyone's going to the same place, but you could also set it up so that they go to different places depending, or it could be that everyone's getting the same document and then they choose the different links, or it could be that you have different documents that are essentially it's the same content, but that the links take students to different places depending on what their needs are. Okay, so comprehensible input, we're gonna listen to something and then we will take the little quiz.
Comprehensible input in English is English language that you can understand. Language inputs are things that you hear, like podcasts, radio, conversations, as well as things you read, like books, articles, blogs, etc. Lewis, 2020. When we use only words, orally or in writing, without any input or context, it is difficult for a language learner to understand what the speaker is saying. When these words are paired with visuals, multimedia, other texts, and a physical context, the meaning of the words is more easily understood, even for simple directions.
Okay, so which of the following is not an example of support for comprehensible input? I'm going to let you guys read, and if you want to just put in the chat what your thoughts are. Okay, so. So the answer is D, translating all materials solely into the student's home language, no matter what the level of English proficiency, is not comprehensible input. And I think of it as, when we think about the least restrictive environment for students with disabilities, I think it's a very similar approach to MLs. You want to have them do as much as they possibly can in English, but then use their home language to help bridge the gap. Okay, so we're trying to shift mindsets to thinking about a student's home language as a problem to thinking of it as an asset. And translanguaging is when we, well, actually, this is what translanguaging is.
In the classroom, translanguaging looks like using more than one language in the same lesson. When a student uses any and all of their linguistics proficiencies in order to communicate, they are translanguaging. When an educator creates space for students to deploy all of their communication tools, they are supporting a translanguage approach. When we do this across learning environments, we expand the opportunities for students to explore concepts, add to their knowledge, and make connections between ideas.
So translanguaging is using multiple languages in the classroom to, using the languages of your students. So take a look at the preview view review strategy. This is one way that you can use translanguaging in your instruction. Okay, so one of the following practices that is not representative of translanguaging is the answer C. Because we don't want students speaking, we're not trying to force students to exclusively speak English if that's not where they are. We want to give, again, it's about bridging the gap using their home language. Okay, activity 5 is supposed to be a breakout room session, but I'm looking at the time and it's 3:23, so I don't think that makes sense. But if you go into your note catcher, you will see at the bottom, you will see instructions and some resources. So basically what you're going, just take a few minutes to look at, and this is an example. So the instructional strategies for comprehensible input and or translanguaging. This is the strategy and this is how you might do it. So if you take a look at the instructional strategies here and then think about how, so you've got under the umbrella of engagement, representation, and action and expression. Just choose one box and read through it. You can pick a couple of resources or one or two resources, and then from those resources, see if you can jot down a supportive tool or a portable practice for in-person strategy and or hybrid or remote. We don't have a ton of time. We only have like 2 or 3 minutes. So just take a quick look, and I am going to, while you're doing that, I'm going to get the link for the reflection form so that you can fill that out, and we have a record of your attendance. Okay, I have put the link for the Google form in the chat. And if, before you leave, if you could just put in the chat either a takeaway from today or a strategy that you are going to try to implement into your instruction based on today, or, you know, whether it could be a new strategy or a new term or something that you're gonna leave thinking about. If you can put that in the chat and fill out the Google form so that we can send you your CTLE credit, and then you are good to go. So thank you so much for attending this afternoon. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a nice Memorial Day weekend next weekend.